It's the day after Election Day, and already we are starting to crunch those numbers for you and get you the analysis as it trickles in. Tasneem Essop is joining me here at our studios at the Results Operations Center. She's a political analyst with Society, Work and Politics Institute, the SWAP Institute. Tasneem, thanks very much for coming on. It's great to see you. I mean, this is a busy time for you, isn't it? From when those ballot boxes are shut, when the voting stations are closed, you start to look at how things are going to be shifting.
Yeah, you start to look at the first few results that come in. You start to look at turnout results we started to get yesterday already, but also with a large dose of just holding back, because you can jump the gun with your analysis, and then the results come in later that show that is just totally off the mark.
Yeah. So. And I mean, in terms of a predictions game, this has been unprecedented in how difficult it's been to predict just how these elections will go.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because the counting is coming in slowly overnight, but also because there's quite a few new players on the scene. So there's in some of the big metros, there's parties like Action SA, the Good Party, that have come in, and a lot more independents contesting than ever before.
Double the number from 2016.
So, I mean, all of those are factors in like how you can project or reasonably project, but I know there's some good scientists who are doing that work at the moment.
So let's talk about some of the big issues that we are focusing on these elections, and as you say, voter turnout is going to play a big part. I mean, who does that benefit? If people stay away from the polls, can we safely say that benefits the governing party or opposition parties?
Well, it's kind of difficult this year because of the number of reasons that have gone into low voter turnout, right? So, I mean, in previous years, there have been a lot of administrative issues that have gone into low voter turnout, and then, of course, voter disgruntlement and so on. And I think this year there's even more of that, right? So you see all of the administrative bureaucratic issues. The pandemic is playing a huge role in this. The amount of time we had before elections, and this is from the IEC side and from political party side. So all of that sits on one side.
Load shedding.
Load shedding, exactly. Load shedding can fit in both, right? The other side of it is the politics of it, and really, it's not. I wouldn't say it's voter apathy. I would say that it's we need to start seeing it as a political choice not to vote, and I think that's where something like load shedding comes into it. How does that affect whether people will go out and cast their vote? So, I mean, what we do know is that it's likely that a lot of voters that would traditionally vote for the major political parties might have stayed away from this poll, and the early results are showing that those smaller parties are faring okay.
Yeah, I'm actually on Davy Skoltz's Twitter page at the moment. He does some great work.
A lot of people are.
In terms of the numbers, and he's reporting the first suburban result that's come in Johannesburg, apparently in Sandringham in Johannesburg, quite low in terms of voter turnout. When you look at suburban voter turnout generally, 45%. The DA down by 15% compared to 2016, 71% for the DA. The ANC down by 3%, 7% this year for the local government election. And I don't know if you're surprised by this, but Action SA, 13% of the vote.
Yeah, so I mean, I had thought that Action SA would do well in certain parts of Johannesburg, particularly in suburban areas, and really tracking that DA vote going to Action SA. I think that's an interesting one, and I mean, later on we're probably going to talk about what part of the ANC vote is being taken up by Action SA too. But if you really track that, the DA has really struggled this election campaign, I would say, and they've been struggling for the last few years, right? But if in the last national election they were really unable to get their messaging there correctly, I think we've seen a continuation of that, but now they have chosen how to message, how to put themselves forward to the electorate, right? And I think what that comes with is that they are going to lose some of their gains, that they made in previous elections, because really, are they able to speak to a broad sweep of South Africans, or are their policies becoming narrow, very much to the center-right, and how they're going on that. Having said that, however, Action SA was running on many conservative kind of policy positions. So I think that's something to take into consideration, where the DA is losing its vote, and which sides of the political spectrum are that falling on.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting, these local government elections. Tasneem Essop is here with us in studio, and she will be for the better part of this morning as we bring you live rolling coverage from the IEC's Results Operations Centre. The results are trickling in. The last update we're seeing there on the board coming at about, I can't see that far, but I think it's about 20 to 5 this morning. That's when we saw the last update. There it is, 919,384. A very small percentage of the vote has come in so far, so we can read very little into these numbers, but we'll be keeping a close eye on it for you right here as they come in. More analysis, more coverage for you throughout the day, right here on 405. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks so much for staying with us here at the Results Operations Centre. As the numbers come in, we're going to try and give you analysis and rolling coverage right here in the heart of the IEC's operations. It's very, very early days, though, 1 to 2% of the vote in at the moment. Tasneem Essop is still with us here in studio. She's a political analyst with Society Work and Politics Institute. Thanks for staying with us, Tasneem. I want to talk more about the issue of suburban turnout. Again, the caveat we have to put in the analysis that we're giving is that we're at 1 to 2% of the vote that has been counted so far. Again, Davis Colt's doing some lovely number crunching for all of us, and we've been able to use it here on the show, certainly. He's talking about interesting results insofar as Cape Town turnout is concerned. Suburban turnout, 66% so far. That's what they're gauging. Township turnout at around 36%. Is that a much bigger gap that we've seen ordinarily in elections?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if those numbers stay accurate throughout the period, then yes, that is a large gap, and it does indicate something very significant around the kind of class character of people who are going out to vote in these elections.
Yeah.
I mean, the suburban vote. We'll have to see how the numbers go and whether there was a bigger push to turn out for a particular party, whether that's the DA or one of the new players, or maybe Freedom Front Plus in some areas and so on. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but it is a significant difference.
Yeah. And, a lot of analysis will tell us that perhaps it's voter apathy. But this election, it's just not that simple, given all of the context with which people went to the ballot box yesterday. Sure.
Look, I think in a country like South Africa, it's never been that simple, right?
Yeah.
I think a kind of knee-jerk response has been to say it's voter apathy, instead of digging a bit deeper to kind of look at the many other political issues that go into someone saying, you know what, I'm not voting. So I've heard a lot of people saying it's a long weekend. That plays into it because
the end of the month
were Monday, so people would have left urban centres, traveled and so on. I think even that indicates to me that people are not committed enough to voting to stay and vote during a long weekend, for example, right? And that for me is a political issue. It's not just I don't want to vote. It's that there isn't enough to take someone out of their house to the ballot box, right? Yeah. And that we really do need to talk about both the side of the IEC. Perhaps there's issues with voter education, although voter education is the responsibility of, across the board, not just the IEC. But we can talk about that, whether they had enough time. Of course, the finances played a big role in this, right? The IEC stated that, there was a funding issue prior to the election date being announced and so on. So those are we can look at that. We also need to look at the political parties. Are they doing enough to capture the political imagination? And I think with voter turnout this low, and what we've seen consistently over our elections, right? Local government elections, the percentage of voter turnout went up in 2016. So that's perhaps a separate conversation.
Yeah.
It didn't skyrocket, but it did go up. Yeah. But are they capturing the political imagination? And with voter turnout this low, you would have to say, the real popular vote is maybe not there yet.
Because why do we go to the polls for local government elections as South Africans? And it's the taglines of many political parties. Because we want to see change. Have we lost that belief in making a change with our vote?
Sure. I mean, I think perhaps, so local government elections are tricky. If this was a national election, we could probably go to town right now about voter turnout and precisely what that means. But because people are voting in their wards for candidates often who they know, and there's that kind of like personal closeness, proximity to a kind of ward vote. But of course, when it comes to the PR vote, you are going on that. The other thing is that this election has very much been contested on national terms. We've seen a lot of political parties coming out with big national issues, and that's been driving the kind of discussions around the election. So I mean, that's just to put both of those sides into perspective. The one is the very local issues that are at play here, and the other is the national picture which the political parties have put into frame. I wonder if the way the coalitions or alliances or relationships that developed after the 2016 election to put in governments in a lot of the hotly contested metropolitan areas and all of those hung municipalities might have had an impact on how people see change over a 5-year period. You know, what has that meant for someone, for a resident, for someone living in an area that was in a coalition situation? And I think the performance of those is important.
So shall we talk about coalition governments? Because for these local government elections in particular, it is looking more and more likely that, again, in the big 3 metros in Gauteng, there's going to be no way of getting around the coalition issue.
Sure. I mean, the way our electoral system is set up in terms of municipal elections, it does, as things progress, favor a kind of coalition system, right? Having said that, I don't think that there's one way to think about this. I'm not sure that it's necessary that coalition governments will perform better, right? Or that majority governments will perform better. I think what it comes down to is questions of representation and accountability, right? And what has been missing really in local government is that, right? The core of local government should be around representation and accountability. And if you don't have that, whether you have a majority, government, an executive that's formed, or a coalition, you're going to have problems. Now, our coalitions have been unstable in certain areas. Of course, we're looking at the ones from 2016. Those have been particularly unstable. We have longer standing coalitions that have had a bit more stability than that. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to put that into perspective. Is there representation and accountability? Are people dictating, beyond the vote, what happens in their local municipalities? And I think that's what's missing, and that's going to be a problem.
It's such a difficult thing because just being in a coalition doesn't mean, as you say, that the metro will perform better or that it will perform worse. And then also governing outright doesn't necessarily mean. If we look at the Free State, Mangaung in particular, the ANC governs outright there. Massive infrastructure issues, massive corruption issues there as well. So which is it? Which is the better option for the voter?
Sure, the better option is true representation for the voter. I think that's the point I will stick to. I think coalition politics are going to be interesting in this election. In a couple of days' time, we're all going to be talking about how the coalitions will fall. The problem is that a lot of our political parties are highly polarized in terms of their messaging, right? And drawing that together is going to be difficult. So when you see parties that are, not in the center, and I don't favor the center particularly, but when you see parties that are really on opposite sides of the political spectrum, you wonder how they can come together. And depending on that split, that share, we might have more parties than just one dictating the kind of tone of a coalition, right?
Tasneem Essop, thanks very much for staying with us here on the AM Report. Some analysis and rolling coverage for you as those results trickle in. We're unpacking some of the issues left over from the local government elections in 2016, just to give us some context for how these polls are taking place in 2021.